Today, we're going to be talking about getting ready to vote. We had a conversation like this time last year as well. All elections are important, but another important one for all of us, especially the city here. So I wanted to make sure you had all the resources you need to make sure you're registered, make sure your registration is still in the system, and also to request an absentee ballot if you need to. They're called early voting by mail ballots too. Anyone can get them now, which is pretty cool. But we'll talk about that a little bit more. Getting ready to vote in 2025. We're going to talk about some key dates that you need to know as we get closer to Election Day, which is November 4th. We're going to talk about how to register or to update your address if you've moved since the last election. That's important because your polling place is going to be based on your current address. So you'll need to go in and update your address if you've moved. How to check your current registration. So you may have heard there's all sorts of shenanigans that go on with voter rolls. So you want to make sure that you're still registered in the system before you go to the polls. I actually used the occasion of making these slides to check and make sure the registration was confirmed, and I'm still in there, so that's good. It was a good motivation to do that. I'm going to show you how to request an absentee ballot. Again, anyone can request these ballots now. You don't have to have any sort of reason. They're also called early voting by mail, so anyone can do that. That was new last year. And I'm going to give you some other reminders and just contact information for the Board of Elections. So here are your key dates. Monday, October 20th is the last date that you can change your address on your registration. That's if you've moved since the last election. Saturday, October 25th is the voter registration deadline. If you're registering to vote online, you need to make sure that you've done it by October 25th. I do believe if you're doing it by paper, it either needs to be postmarked or received by the 25th. I'll get back to that, but just do it as soon as possible. You don't want to get right down to the deadline on that. October 25th is also the last day to request an absentee ballot or an early voting by mail ballot. A lot of things on October 25th. Saturday, October 25th through Sunday, November 2nd is all early voting. So polls will be open for early voting. We'll talk a little bit in a later session about how to find your polling place for early voting. Often it's different than the one that you use for Election Day voting. So that's going to be in our next session when we talk about some of the practical things to do when you go to vote. Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th. So you can vote at your local polling place on Election Day as well. I do encourage you to take advantage of early voting if you can, if it's something you want to do. I found that lines are shorter. It's just easier experience. So consider that. Also, you have your choice of a number of days, which might fit your schedule better than the following Tuesday. So what are we voting for in this election? Here in New York, we're voting for mayor. We're voting for the city comptroller. We're voting for public advocate, lots of city offices, borough president, city council members, and more, including some budget propositions, which we'll go over in our next session about being prepared when you go to your polling site. Next week, we're going to talk about how to preview your ballot. You mark those choices either on your phone or on a sheet that you print out, and you can take them with you so you're not second guessing anything when you're standing there trying to remember who you wanted to vote for, how you wanted to vote on one of these propositions. So we'll be talking about that. But a lot of really important offices, especially given the state of all politics right now. So please do make it a point to vote in this election. Who's eligible to register? So in New York City, these are the eligibility requirements to register to vote. And whenever you go to register to vote, they'll tell you these at the top of either the sheet or the web page where you're registering. But just as a reminder, you need to be a citizen of the United States. Obviously, that includes Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. You need to be a New York resident for at least 30 days. You have to be 18 years old on election day to vote. There is a thing in New York State and New York City where you can pre-register if you're 16 or 17. So if you have younger relatives that are 16 or 17 and they want to pre-register to vote, they can go through the exact same process, but they won't be able to actually go and cast their vote until they turn 18. But it's good that they'll be set up to do that as soon as they turn 18. You can't register to vote if you are currently in prison for a felony conviction, if you can claim the right to vote elsewhere, and you have to not have been found incompetent by a court. So those are the 6 eligibility requirements to vote in New York City, to register to vote, but to vote as well. So if you need to register or if you need to change your address since the last election, you're going to go to eregister.vote.nyc. And that will take you directly to this page that allows you to do your registration. And what you'll see is who can use this application. So this is for New York City residents, what you can do with this application. So if you're registering to vote for the first time, you can change the name or address on your voter registration. If you've moved or if you change your name, you go in and do the same process. You just do it as like a updated voter registration. You can change your political party membership or become a member of a political party. Just a reminder that being registered as a Democrat or a Republican or any political party means that you get to vote in the primaries. So the primaries are the elections that are earlier in the year to choose the candidates that end up in the general election. So if you want to register with a political party, that means that you get the opportunity to vote in those primary elections. So consider that. And then it gives you those qualifications you have to have down here that we just talked about. So that's the front page of this registration form. They'll ask you just to verify that you live in New York City, if you have a driver's license, permit, or non-driver ID. You can also register through the DMV, but I find this site easier to handle. The DMV one is a little bit confusing. You have to say that you're a citizen in order to be eligible to vote. So you're just saying that all these things are true. Then you enter some personal information. If you have a driver's license, you can put that in, or you can use the last 4 digits of your social security number. If you don't have either of those things, I think you make some sort of statement or you use other documentation to show that. But go ahead, if you have a DMV number, use that or your social security number. And then you want to put the address where you currently live. So if you're changing your address from the last time, you want to say where you are right now. And then if you receive mail there, either say, yes, you do, same address as above, or you can put in a different mailing address. And that'll just mean that they'll send you information about voting. How you get those guides sometimes, they'll send that kind of stuff to your mailing address rather than your physical address if you have a different one. And then you can say if you have or haven't voted before. Let's say you were changing your address on your voter registration. You can say, yes, I voted before. And they'll ask you to put in your old address just so they can make sure that they're updating from where you were before or that they're not doing duplicate entries of you in the system. Then here's where you can register for a political party. You can say, I don't wish to, you can say other, but you can do this if you haven't done it before. And then it will ask you to sign your name. You just do it with your cursor or with your finger if you're on your phone. And then you'll say next. Again, affirm that you are qualified to register to vote. That's my cursor signature from last year, looking a little funky. You do the thing where you say, I'm not a robot. And then once you hit submit, it will confirm that they've received it. You can go back into that same website and it has a thing where you can, on the status of your ballot registration, you can go back there. I'll show you how to check that you're registered too. So you can do that a couple of days later just to make sure that you are good to go. If you'd rather register by mail rather than doing it through the online form, that's fine. This is a picture of what that voter registration form looks like that you send in the mail. We have these at the building and they're postage paid if you're not comfortable filling out the form online. Postage paid, fill them out, and then drop them in a mailbox. And then you can check if you are registered within the system by doing what I'm going to show you in just a second, where you check on your registration. It usually takes them a couple of days, but you can always go in there and check just to make sure. The form has to be received by the Board of Elections by October 25th, so not postmarked. They have to have it in their hands by October 25th. So just go ahead and do this as soon as possible if you need to do it. If you need to change anything on your registration or if you need to register for the first time, just do it sooner rather than later because you don't want to get too close to that deadline. If you want to check your registration, you're going to go to miregistered.vote.nyc. And you should see, this is a phone image of it, but you should see a screen that looks like this, registered voter search. So this is just to make sure you're still in the system, your address in there is right, you didn't get bumped out of it for any strange reason. It's a good practice to do this before each election, just to make sure you don't show up there and run into any trouble. So you should see a screen that looks like this. And by trouble, I just mean red tape to make it any more complicated. You should be registered if you've registered before. This is just a good way to confirm. So once you fill out that information, I think it'll ask for your name and your address. You should see a screen that says registered voter found. It confirms your information down here at the bottom of the screen here where it says voter information. You should see your name, your address, your precinct, and all of that at your voting site. That should all be right here. Ideally, what you will find here is registered voter found. If you don't see that registered voter found, if there's an error or something, go back again, make sure you got all your personal information correct. If you still didn't, then you may need to register again, or you may need to call the Board of Elections just to see if they have you in there some other way. Hopefully what you will get is just registered voter found. You're good to go. But again, good practice to do before you show up to vote. How to request an early mail ballot or an absentee ballot. If you have applied for an absentee ballot in the past, you don't automatically get them unless you've applied and said that you have a permanent illness or physical disability. You have the option to do that. So if you have done that in the past, you should get absentee ballot automatically. If not, you're going to need to go in and request one for each election. So for this election too. If you're not sure like how you're registered, you can go in here and check, but you can also call the Board of Elections, which is 212-VOTE-NYC. just to see if you are in there listed as having a permanent illness or physical disability, and therefore you would get it automatically. And the very last day to request an absentee ballot online or by mail is October 25th. So again, it's got to be in their hands by October 25th, the request, or you have to have done it online by October 25th. And this is how you do it. So to request online, you can go to requestballot.vote.nyc. And you'll see there's the early mail ballot application and an absentee ballot application. There's not a huge amount of difference in terms of these anymore because anyone can request an early mail ballot application. You don't have to have any reason. Anybody's eligible to do that. If you would rather vote by then actually go to a polling place, feel free to do that. Absentee ballots, they're still keeping that distinction for if you're going to be out of the city, you can't vote, or if you have something that limits your ability to get to a polling place. So both of those are options, and the process for those is pretty similar. If you are somebody that might qualify for an absentee ballot, you can also just request an early mail ballot. They're interchangeable unless you are going to need them recurringly in the future. So what I'll ask you to do is enter your name, your birth date, your address. This is where they'll send it to. And again, it'll say, I'm doing an absentee ballot. So they do want you to have a reason if you're asking for an absentee ballot, but not for an early mail ballot. Again, they're very similar things, but you can tell them what the reason is, what election you're requesting them for. For this one, it would be the general election. And then you can say any election between these dates and then put dates in there. If you want to get more of them in the future, then you can choose mail to me at my residential address, mail to me at a different address, deliver to me in person at the Board of Elections, which might be not the most convenient thing. So probably it's going to be mail it to you or mail it to a different address if your residential address is different. And then you just say, I consent to them using my signature as the digital format that is already on file. And you certify that this is true, say you're not a robot, and then hit submit. And you should receive your ballot by mail in the next week or so. Please be sure to do that sooner rather than later. These are the important dates for vote by mail and absentee ballot, just timing for that. So the last day to request one is October 25th, the deadline for a lot of these things. So last day to request a absentee or vote by mail ballot is October 25th. You have to make sure your ballot is postmarked no later than election day itself, so November 4th. You can drop your ballot off to your county board of elections office no later than November 4th at 9 p.m. You can drop it off to an early voting site between October 25th and November 2nd, or you can drop it off on election day to your polling sites no later than 9 p.m. It's a vote by mail, it's an absentee ballot, like put in the mail. That's probably your easiest thing, but just do it as soon as you can get it done. As soon as you get it and you feel confident in what you're voting for, just send it as soon as you can. It'll save you a trip to the Board of Elections or to your polling place, which you might have wanted to avoid in the first place. And these are also postage paid, so you don't need to add additional postage to them. Just a reminder, your vote is powerful, your vote is private, and to be careful about where you get your election and candidate information. We've talked a lot about scams and AI and how there are many things that you can't trust from internet sources. Make sure that you are getting your information about elections and voting and candidates from reliable sources. Listen to what the candidates say themselves. But just a heads up about that, election seasons are times when a lot of misinformation and disinformation gets circulated. So you want to just keep an eye out for that and be really savvy about where you're getting this information. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in our next Tech Talk about elections. If you need any more help, you can always email me, and my knowledge is limited, but I can do my best. You can also contact the NYC Board of Elections, which is available at 1-800-VOTE-NYC, which is also 212-VOTE-NYC, and then vote at boe.nyc.ny.us. My experience of Board of Elections is really responsive, so if you call them and have a question, they're pretty quick at being able to answer it.